To complete the awakening of the Master Sword, you must go to the Wind Temple for one more prayer. This is Legendary Adventures, a Legend of Zelda playthrough podcast. This week we're awakening the Wind Sage and restoring the Master Sword to full power. Before we do that, however, we're going to take a couple more steps towards restoring the Triforce of Courage. One of the strangest elements of the Wind Waker is one particular detail included in descriptions of the Great Sea. It yields no fish to catch. This is spoken by multiple characters throughout the game, and yet we know that there are fish within it. There are, of course, the fishmen who fill out Link's sea chart. There are sharks and squid-like octos, and the flying sea hats, not to mention the water spirit Jaboon, who takes on the form of a massive angler fish. Add to that a moment in Lenzo's camera shop on Windfall Island. He has a gallery on the top floor showcasing photos that he took. One photo is of Link's home island, Outset. Lenzo describes it as the most delightful of fishing villages. On Outset, we can find at least some evidence of fishing. There are canoes on the beach near Link's house, and the Swordmaster Orca has a collection of shark jaws on his walls. Clearly, Outset is an island with secrets if many people believe the Great Sea yields no fish, and yet Outset is a fishing village. One secret of the island is the sword technique known as the Hurricane Spin. I forgot to get this technique before heading to the Earth Temple, but I rectified it afterwards. Upon returning to see Orca after setting out on your adventure, he tests Link's skill. Players are challenged to hit Orca 100 times before he hits Link 3. Orca becomes more aggressive the more hits he takes. If players land 500 hits on him, they will receive a heart piece. I got in 150 hits or so, but I did not pursue the heart piece on this playthrough. Afterwards, I presented him with 10 Knight's Crests. These spoil items are claimed from Darknuts. Orca says it takes power, wisdom, and courage to claim them. He says he and his brother Sturgeon sought them when they were younger, but they grew old before they ever obtained enough. He then teaches Link the Hurricane Spin. Players charge a spin attack, and Link spins around wildly for a few seconds. Orca is so happy to have passed on this knowledge to Link, he cries tears of joy. There are yet more secrets on Outset Island. A black pig we collected for Rose at the start of the game has grown to enormous size. Abe asks Link if he can take it for a walk. Link can carry the pig with the power bracelets. There are dark patches of soil in various spots on Outset Island. One patch across the bridge and near the cliff face, not far from Mace's house, holds a heart piece. The pig will dig it up if Link places bait on the soil. Outset Island is home to one of 4 massive stone heads known as Stone Watchers. We found 2 in the last episode, one inside Fire Mountain, and the other on Headstone Island blocking the entrance to the Earth Temple. The stone on Outset is on a high ledge on the west side of the island. It can only be reached by gliding with the Deku Leaf. The stone head hides the island's greatest secret, the Savage Labyrinth. It's 50 floors of combat challenges, broken into a series of more or less themed challenges. Each floor contains an arrangement of enemies. Some floors are dark, some feature additional items like torches or bomb flowers. The first 10 floors are cave-themed, the second 10 are forest-themed, and the third 10 are temple-themed. Every 10th floor is a respite floor. The 10th and 20th floors feature pots full of rupees and recovery hearts. The 30th floor holds a Triforce chart in the GameCube version, and a Triforce shard in the HD version. Players need to have the Mirror Shield if they wish to venture further into the labyrinth. There is an elephant statue from the Earth Temple blocking the path forward, and a shaft of light which can be reflected at the statue to destroy it. The 4th set of floors are forest-themed in appearance, but they primarily focus on undead enemies. The 5th set of floors are temple-themed again, and it features a variety of enemies from all areas of the game. Challenging enemies like Darknuts, Wizrobes, and Stalfos make multiple appearances. The final challenge is 4 powerful Darknuts in a room lined with flame-spitting Moblin statues. The final floor holds a piece of heart in the GameCube version, or the hero's charm in the HD version. The charm is a mask that reveals the hidden health meters of enemies when worn. It is the only mask in the game. In the GameCube version, the charm is obtained from Mrs. Marie after giving her 40 joy pendants. One square west and 3 squares north of Outset Island, there is a massive stone pinnacle rising from the sea. It is Needle Rock Island. To the west of the island are 3 pirate ships floating on the water. 2 of them are topped with silver cannons. One has a gold cannon. Each one holds treasure. A light ring appears in the water where the ship has sunk. The treasure inside the gold-top ship is a Triforce chart in both versions of the game. Needle Rock Island itself holds 2 secrets. One is a cave under a block of ice. The cave is full of sunken ships. The wreckage prevents Link from traveling any further than the entrance. Link needs to light 6 torches with fire arrows to reveal a chest with an orange rupee. Back on the surface, Link can use a Hyoi pear to possess a seagull to hit a crystal switch at the very top of the pinnacle. The switch lowers a flame barrier, allowing Link to open a chest with a heart piece inside. Nice! The Wind Temple is on Gale Island. A statue of an Octorok blows out an endless stream of wind, repelling anyone who tries to approach. A fishman near Gale Island points Link to Ice Ring Island for an item that will make him as heavy as a stone. Ice Ring Island is located immediately west of Forest Haven. True to its name, it is a ring of ice. Freezing cold air blows out of a dragon-shaped cave. The cold air instantly freezes anyone who tries to approach. Shooting a fire arrow at the cave melts the ice around it and puts an end to the freezing wind for 5 minutes. Like with Fire Mountain, Link needs to get into the cave and get an item before time runs out. Ice Ring Island is a much more involved island than Fire Mountain. There are treasure chests hidden in blocks of ice which Link can melt. There are rupees to grab and unique ice physics. Link slips and slides on the ice. The pathway to reach the cave narrows as Link makes his way around the ring. There are also platforms which Link needs to jump across to get inside the cave. Once inside, Link needs to fight bats and to make his way down 3 ice slides. The first 2 are short and straight. The third is longer and has a curve in it. It kind of reminds me of Super Mario 64. A chest in the mouth of a smaller ice dragon holds the item we're after, the Iron Boots. Unlike the Nintendo 64 release of Ocarina of Time, the Wind Waker treats the Iron Boots like an item which players assign to an action button. This makes using them much quicker and easier and frankly just plain better. Players also do not use the Iron Boots to go underwater, but to walk through gusts of wind created by fans, break through weak floors, press certain switches, and to use springboards which will hurl Link high into the air. There is a gust of wind blowing from a small cave passageway just north of the treasure chest. Players can use the Iron Boots to walk through that gust of wind to get to the entrance. There's also a hidden lower level of Ice Ring Isle. It's full of enemies frozen in ice. There are 2 Moblins frozen in separate blocks of ice, a Dark Nut, and 2 Bokoblins frozen in a single block. When all the enemies are defeated, a chest appears with an orange rupee inside. Using the Iron Boots, Link is able to approach the Octorok statue which is blowing wind on Gale Island. Using the Skull Hammer, Link can destroy the statue, stopping the wind. Inside the cavern, Link finds another tablet with a Wind Waker song on it. It is the Wind God's aria. When Link plays it, he receives another vision of an ancient sage. This one is named Fado. He is of the Kokiri tribe. His green clothes are similar to, yet distinct from the clothes that Link wears, at least in the first quest. As with Laruto, Fado was praying in the temple when he was killed by Ganondorf. He urges Link to find his descendant who carries his violin. Players should recognize the violin as the same one that Makar played during the ceremony following the Forbidden Woods. Traveling to Forest Haven, Makar can be heard playing his violin. Musical notes emerge from a waterfall. Using the Deku Leaf, players can fly into the waterfall and find Makar. He's surprised Link was able to find him. He's practicing behind the waterfall in an attempt to keep the song he plans on playing for next year's ceremony private. Plainly, he did not realize his music could be heard above the roar of the waterfall. When Link produces the Wind Waker, Makar asks to be conducted by him. We play the Wind God's aria. Makar feels as if he already knows the song that Link has just taught him. As he plays, he is transfigured into the form of Fado. Link joins in the performance. After playing the song, the two bow to the applause of an unseen audience. Makar returns to his original shape, awakened as a sage. He asks to be taken to the Wind Temple to restore power to the Master Sword. Link, Makar, and the King of Red Lions travel to the temple. The king urges them to cooperate together, much as he did with Link and Medley. Link and Makar venture inside. They perform the Wind God's aria, causing the tablet blocking the entrance to crumble. The pair then descend into the dungeon. The Wind Temple is an ancient structure with a heavy mechanical theme. It's made from brown stone. There are several mechanisms that appear to be made out of metal with a similar brown color scheme. The dungeon is decorated with several stone heads. These are distinct from the stone watchers like the massive stone head we found on Outset. They instead more closely resemble the heads found on Easter Island. The dungeon itself is ancient and overgrown. Moss and grass creep up the walls and spread across the floors. The color may suggest a forest theme, but it's actually much different. This is a space of ancient mechanical technology. The music has a mysterious, slightly melancholy vibe. It's anchored by an ostinato played on flutes. It gives them an air of mystery. The melody is picked up by additional flutes and what sounds to me like a marimba playing in unison. It's a quirky and seemingly light-hearted melody. That is, until the flutes give way to guitar. It takes the melody into a more melancholic direction for me. After the guitar finishes, strings are added to the mix, giving the theme a hint of danger. It is, in my opinion, one of the stronger dungeon themes in the game. The Wind Temple spans 3 floors, 2 above-ground floors and 1 basement level. It's a highly vertical dungeon, especially as players navigate through the circular central room which spans all floors. The dungeon is also broken up into roughly 3 segments, defined not only by whether Link has the dungeon item, but by whether he has the companionship of Makar. Like Medley, Makar can be called on to follow Link.
Come on!
He can also be controlled with the command Melody. GameCube players have to carry him through doors. Makar is much smaller and slower than Medley. He also can't carry Link in a glide like Medley could. Makar has a unique special skill of growing trees. He can only do this in set locations with soft soil. He will, however, go through doors as long as he is following Link in the HD version. Design manager Yoshiki Haruhana and director Eiji Aonuma talked a bit about Makar's design and ability in the Japanese guidebook, which was translated on Glitterberry's game translations. Haruhana said, "The reason Makar looks like a tree clump is that at first we had a number of ideas for him, including using him as a floating platform, allowing you to walk on water, and setting him up high somewhere to use as a hookshot target." He laughed. Aonuma then added, "We felt way too bad for him, so he ended up scattering seeds and growing trees." Makar's tree-growing ability is introduced right at the start of the dungeon. The first 4 rooms of the dungeon are laid out in a straight line. In the second room, players can plant trees to reveal a hidden, optional treasure chest with an orange rupee inside. The presence of a Wizrobe makes it a little tricky. It's a good idea to take out the Wizrobe first. The room also introduces some unique mechanics of the dungeon. There are fans blowing gusts of wind from the ceiling, preventing Link from crossing the room on his Deku Leaf, but that is the only way to cross. A couple of springboards are also nearby. They fling Link high into the air if he first weighs them down with the iron boots and then removes them. Players need to control Makar to walk under the blowing wind, and then to fly up on a ledge and press a floor switch turning off the fans. There is a Stalfos which emerges from the ground just beyond the wind gusts, but it can be ignored. With the wind off, Link can use the springboard and a Deku Leaf to cross the room. Down below near the Stalfos is a warp pot, which is closed with a wooden lid. It can be opened with a well-placed bomb or fire arrow while standing above and out of reach of the enemy. The third room contains a wind-powered crank, like we saw in the Forbidden Woods. In the dungeon, these cranks are used to change the orientation of metal grates. In the third room, a grate forms a wall which cannot be passed until players use the crank to swing it up into the ceiling. On the far side of the room, players are forced to use Makar's tree-growing ability to open a door. This ensures players know how to use it if they overlook the optional chest in the second room. In the fourth room, there is a large drop to a lower level, and 2 out-of-reach platforms leading to a high level. There are also 2 doors, one on the level we came in on, and one high above. Both are barred shut, but they will open if Makar plants 3 trees. One on each of the platforms leading up to the higher level, and one on that highest level. As soon as he plants these trees, the doors open. But Floor Masters also appear and drag Makar away. This starts the second segment of the dungeon. In this segment, Link has to go it alone. The door to the west is now open, leading to the central room of the dungeon. Link finds Makar locked in a cell on the north side of the room. A massive stone head blocks the entrance, preventing Makar from escaping. He hints that Link will need to be as heavy as the Great Deku Tree to pull down the statue. The central room spans all 3 floors, but access to those floors opens in stages. The intended path is for players to head west. This will take them on a looping path through 2 large rooms in the dungeon. In the first room, players drop to a lower level and use a crank to turn a grate and create a floor. They then dodge spike traps to get to a door on the northwest. There's a Wind God's Aria tablet to take note of. The second room is massive and long. Players use the Deku Leaf and fans on the floor, creating updrafts to wind their way through the massive room. Peahats and Wizrobes are dealt with along the way. The path ends with a door that leads back into the central room. Link exits onto a high ledge that he can't otherwise climb. There is a floor switch which can only be pressed with the iron boots. It opens the floor of the central room, giving access to the lower level. I think it's worth noting that the long room with the fans blowing upward can be entirely skipped. First-time players are unlikely to do this, or to note it, but it's a fun option for returning players. There is a second warp pot on the high ledge with the switch to open the floor. A well-placed fire arrow will burn the lid off of it. Players can then backtrack to the first warp pot and use it to skip the looping path. Players will have to head back through the west door after reuniting with Makar to break the Wind God's Aria tablet, which they won't have seen, so you'll have to remember that. Players will also miss out on collecting the dungeon map, so again, I think only returning players should ever do this. But it's a fun detail and it makes this dungeon a bit more flexible than most in the game. On the bottom level, there are doors to the north and south. The north door is locked. Through the south door, players use the iron boots to break through a weak floor to a lower level. They then place a springboard in the proper position to shoot themselves back up to the upper level of the room. This particular room reminds me of how the trampolines were used in Oracle of Seasons. We get a key, then head north to face the mini-boss. The mini-boss is a Wizrobe, but this one looks different from any other in the game. It wears an orange robe and has a golden headdress. This Wizrobe can summon other enemies, including other Wizrobes. There are other Wizrobes in the game which can summon enemies, but this is the only one which can summon other Wizrobes. This is also one of the most frantic mini-boss fights of the game. I generally do my best to take out the Wizrobes first, and I ignore the other enemies as much as possible until the Wizrobes are gone. Once the orange-robed Wizrobe is gone, the music shifts into the standard battle theme. I then finish off the rest of the enemies, and once the room is clear, a chest appears with the dungeon item. It's the Hookshot. The Hookshot is distinct from the grappling hook. It does not replace it, and the two items do not feel redundant. As with past games, the Hookshot is used as a grappling hook which allows Link to quickly cross from one point to another. It can also be used as a weapon against some enemies, and to pull objects as long as Link is weighed down enough. Using the Hookshot, Link ascends back up to the first floor and to where Makar is trapped. Using the Hookshot together with the iron boots, Link can pull the massive stone head down and free Makar. This begins the third segment of the dungeon. On the bottom floor, players can use Makar to start a fan below the floor of the basement. The fan turns off intermittently. Using the fan, Link and Makar can fly up to the second floor of the dungeon to get a key from the room on the south side. They can also go through a door hidden by a Wind God's Aria tablet in the room on the east side of the first floor to get the boss key. Both keys are acquired by clearing rooms of enemies. Heading back to the room where Makar was captured, players can use Makar's trees and the Hookshot to reach an upper door in the room. Using Makar and Link together to press two switches, players open the grating that covers the fan on the basement floor, allowing them to drop below the fan. After dropping through the fan, players proceed through a straightforward gauntlet. There are 3 rooms in an L shape. 2 of the rooms are very long. In the first room, players fight enemies and use Makar's tree-growing ability to turn off some fans. In another room, Link needs to use the iron boots to walk against the wind, and place push blocks to shield against spike traps. There are 3 blocks and 3 spike traps, but 1 block must be used to create a path across a ditch partway through the room. There are probably other ways to do this, but I always use the first block to shield against the first 2 spike traps. They can be halted by placing the block in between both traps. The second block is then dropped into the ditch, and I use the third block to stop the third spike trap. From here, players destroy one last Wind God's Aria tablet to reach the boss door. But before we talk about the boss, let's talk a little bit about Tingle. The Tingle tuner was put to use extensively in Dragon Roost Cavern. There was also plenty to find in the Forbidden Woods and the Tower of the Gods, though Mandy and I had a hard time finding what was there in the tower. The Forsaken Fortress and Earth Temple had very little for Tingle to find. The Wind Temple has more to offer than either of those 2 previous dungeons, but it's still pretty scant compared to the first 3.
What is that I'm looking at? Wow, it smells like treasure. You just flew over it, I'm pretty sure.
In a change from the previous dungeons, the chest with the Tingle statue inside is found pretty early on. It's found in the 4th room of the dungeon, the room that Makar gets captured in.
So this is a spot where there's obviously a treasure chest. I can bomb there when we're ready.
The chest is found in the lowest part of the room, and Tingle will need to be on that lowest level with Link in order to find it.
Oh, Paul, you found it! This is the Wind Tingle statue! I'm in the Kulu pose here. Is that how you say it? Kulu?
Yeah, sounds right to me.
With artist's eyes, Knuckle was able to capture the moment Tingle's magic awoke. Wow, whoa, wow! Oh, Mr. Fairy, you've got all of them. Something good awaits you on Tingle Island. Ooh, something good. Hopefully not a great fairy.
For getting all 5 statues, Tingle's brother Ankle will give Link 500 rupees. According to a guide by GameFAQs user 2222, checking the statues with the Tingle tuner also reveals a password. It's apparently just a hint to find the pot on the ledge below the Stone Watcher on Outset Island. Mandy and I found this pot on our own, following what appeared to be a hint from Tingle on the island. It contains an orange rupee worth 100 rupees every time it's broken. Back to the Earth Temple, Mandy found at least 4 hidden items inside the dungeon.
What is here? What is that I am looking at? Wow, 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 wow. There's an arrow!
You found arrows, thank you.
I found arrows! Congratulations!
While most of the hidden Tingle items in past dungeons were rupees, in this dungeon we found only arrows and fairies.
Check it out! Fairy, fairy.
What?
It's a fairy! What a cutie! That's what he said! I'm not joking! He acted like, what? No. No, it said fairy, fairy. What a cutie!
In the Earth Temple, Mandy also figured out that Tingle could lock on and target enemies, making his bombs more useful for combat. Mandy helped with a number of fights throughout this dungeon.
You got him.
I told you I'm getting good at this bombing things because I can. I figured out how to lock on. It makes it much easier. How much are red rupees worth?
20.
Oh, good. So it was worth my bomb.
Enemies defeated by a Tingle bomb generally drop rupees. Sometimes they were yellow rupees, canceling out the cost of the bomb. Sometimes they were red rupees, netting a profit of 20 rupees, though we still managed to use more rupees than we gained as we moved through the dungeon.
Sorry, that one didn't give you any rupees.
That's all good.
Yeah, but you might want your rupee.
I've got 598.
Yeah, but you had 700 at the beginning. Okay, you had 698, but at some point you went over 700.
The Wind Temple is the last dungeon where players can use the Tingle Tuner. The Tingle Tuner can also be used on the Great Sea. There are apparently rings of light that can only be seen on the Tingle Tuner. A Reddit post by Ultima Samsune includes a map published by Famitsu. According to this map, it appears that most, but not all the squares on the sea chart contain a light ring that only Tingle can find. Mandy also seemed to be able to see where the barrel courses would appear in the Great Sea before I could see them. We did not, however, spend much time traveling the Great Sea with the Tingle Tuner. After we wrapped up the dungeon, Mandy and I talked about how we felt about the Tingle Tuner overall.
Overall, I definitely think it's a fun addition. I like that you can play with other people, and you did play with one of our kids, and they liked it, right?
Yeah.
They had a great time. It's our kid that's less video game savvy, the younger, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She's still learning, but she seemed to have a great time. But I feel like she might have gotten more bored towards these end ones, because there wasn't as much to find. And I even kind of got a little bored, because it was like, I've looked through this room, I've looked through, you know, especially where you're coming back to a main room.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've looked through this room, I don't see anything. Like, nothing new is appearing. Like, how many times do you look through the same spots?
Yeah.
And hope something's different? Because you don't know if it will or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
So.
Yeah, I agree. Like, those last three really, right? The Fortress and Earth Temple, Wind Temple really did not have
much
of anything to find in them, which makes it less fun.
Yeah. You know, there were times where I got a little bored. And especially when there were a lot of, like, you know, like every time you made a Deku tree, or, you know, there were a lot of cutscene places, or just like, please wait, and so you'd just be like, you know, like, check my email, like, it kind of pulled you out of the game a little bit, because you're sitting just waiting.
Yeah.
But it was definitely fun. We had a good time. Our kids had a good time playing that way, without having the Wii U anymore, or the, you know, Nintendo DS. I don't know that they could build that capability in again, but
yeah,
you know, taking those out, you've definitely kind of lost some of that ability.
Right. I mean, you maybe could make a phone app that would do it, but
then you'd have to have a phone that's...
You gotta have the right phone, and because even, like, we've got everybody 1-2 Switch, and you can play with your phone, but it doesn't like
certain phones.
All phones, yeah. Like,
yeah, your phone's a little older, and it's like, no.
It doesn't like my phone.
You can't do half the games.
It excludes me from some games.
It would be kind of cool if they made a 2-player, if you had 2 Switches, because I know plenty of families do that. They have 2 Switches, or you can have a friend play along with you or something. That would be really fun too.
Yeah.
I tried Wind Waker one time, and I think I made it to where the first, like, prison, and got caught a couple times in the light and was like, I'm done. I don't have the patience for it. Not that I'm saying anything against it. I mean, I like watching you play it. It was one that I was more interested in because I liked the graphics, and I'm very much I have to kind of like the graphics, because if I don't like the graphics, I'm not going to play it. But I think Tingle is actually a really fun addition. I wish they would have done more with it, though, on the islands. Like, either done less on the first island and a little bit more on the other islands, just so it was a little more even.
Mm-hmm.
Or just more all around. And we did go through the ocean a little bit. It was kind of interesting to be like, oh, look, barrels are coming up, or oh, there's a bad guy, or there's a whirlpool, or, you know, I could see things that you couldn't, which was kind of interesting. But we didn't play that much. We were just on our way to an island kind of thing.
Right, yeah. I think having more to it would be better overall.
Yeah.
Like,
well, or like I said,
trailed off towards the end, and I think just, like, there's Windfall Island and Outset Island both had little scavenger hunt games on them. but none of the other islands.
Yeah.
And it would be fun if, at least all the settled islands, right, had something like that.
Yeah, if there was a little more consistency to it, I think, is my thing. Because it was like, that first one had so much, and then the next one had nothing. Or not nothing, but it felt like so much less that I was like, I've got to be doing something wrong. What am I missing? And I wasn't doing anything wrong. And then I feel like this last one, there was maybe a little bit more effort put in. I almost felt like they were like, oh shoot, we should have added a little bit more in. Let's throw a treasure chest. Like, let's add a couple extra little, like, Tingle mentions. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a little meh towards the end. I really liked that first one. I was like, oh, this is going to be really fun. And I'm going to have a lot of fun doing this. And then it was like, oh, well, I can do a little bit, but I'm not,
Yeah. Could be better.
Could have been better, but it was a great thought if it had just been a little better executed.
Now let's get to the boss. The boss is Molgera, a giant worm creature. Its name is intended to recall the past worm bosses like Moldorm and Twin Mold. Molgera's boss theme is, in my opinion, in contention for the best in the game and maybe even the best in the series. Only the music of the final bosses in the final dungeon really rivals it in this game. The music is incredibly energetic, anchored by a chugging train-like percussion. The melody is played on a high flute, maybe a piccolo. It's a really bouncy melody, upbeat even. It's fun, even triumphant as it dances from a high note quickly heading down and then back up again. The melody builds as it goes, with strings and synth brass adding some tension. The melody even sometimes does a call and answer harmony with the strings. And other times the strings serve as a counter melody to the flute. An ostinato on marimba or maybe xylophone adds to the energy, and it really helps develop a slightly frantic edge to the music. The boss fight happens in a circular sand-covered arena. Molgera will rise out of the sand with its mouth open wide. Its tongue is sort of an anglerfish-inspired lure. It has a light on the tip of it, and it wriggles around as if to lure prey into the great worm's gaping maw. The tongue is also the weak point. Link can grab it with the hookshot and then wail away. After a few hits, Molgera returns to the sand, spitting out baby Molgera enemies as it does. They move through the sand and leap out at Link. They can also be grabbed with the hookshot and dispatched by landing hits to the head. Molgera moves beneath the sand and will attempt to emerge beneath Link to snatch him in its jaws. The Great Worm can also fly, not unlike Twin Mold in Majora's Mask. The feel of this fight is much different, however. Link never becomes giant here, and Molgera seems to be much more purposeful in its landings, seeming to try to hit Link more. These smaller Molgera enemies also change the feel of the fight significantly. After landing enough hits on the monster's tongue, it takes to the air one last time before exploding in a puff of smoke. It leaves behind a heart container. The sand partially drains from the room, exposing a circular stone platform with the Hyrulean family royal crest. Makar enters the room, and together they play a song in prayer to the gods. The spirit of Fado appears, joining in the song. Once the song is complete, the blade of the Master Sword begins to glow. The sword is now fully restored with the power to repel evil. Makar plans to stay behind and continue to pray. Link returns to the surface and discovers the King of Red Lions in conversation with a fishman. He overhears that the Forsaken Fortress is now empty. Ganon and his minions have cast it aside, like a snake shedding its skin. The King of Red Lions is not happy about this news. He says that he has a feeling of foreboding about Princess Zelda, or Tetra as she really is known. Before we can return to the ruins of Hyrule, however, and face Ganon, Link needs to collect the pieces of the Triforce of Courage. We'll round up the charts and the pieces that we haven't collected next week, before heading into the final confrontation with Ganon. If you want to follow along and you haven't already, please subscribe. And a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. You are incredible. I am Paul Riley, and I will see you next week.